Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm fine. I'm sitting in my car in front of Emma's.
Ooh, 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 ooh.
David is studying with Shmuel, and I do here. So,
And your
yeah.
apartment's not big enough for two people to study at the same time?
No, she's in
It's
the
no,
car.
I'm
Oh,
in the car.
I
It's
know.
noisy and it's noisy in there, so I'm sitting in the car studying.
Oh,
I'm
there's
glad it's
nothing.
not hot. I'm I'm glad it's not 90 degrees. That's all I
Okay,
can do.
they're in Emmons. That, got it.
sorry. No problem. No problem.
Okay. Uh,
Morning, everybody.
Hi, Estelle.
Hi,
How are you?
Estelle.
Hi, Estelle.
Hi.
Okay, dokie.
Lois, I realized one other reason why it was good for me to stay home last night.
What happened? Why?
I had to watch Ken Jennings and Matt Damon win $1 million on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire.
They did?
Oh, really? They did?
Yes. Will you come on, Ken Jennings? If he didn't win $1 million on Millionaire, there'd be a lot of talk.
Was there any question that he had trouble with?
Yes, there were a couple, and they did use a couple of the lifelines. But the very last one, the $1 million question, he knew the answer off the top of his head, and it was some weird word. But
You could see he knew it immediately.
yes,
That's
but
cool.
they did 50-50 to make sure he was right. And he was.
Wow.
But Matt Damon and Jimmy Kimmel have had this running thing
Yes,
where
for
they
years.
supposedly hate each other.
Right.
So the whole communication between them
Oh, because
was
Jimmy Kimmel.
hysterical.
Oh, Jimmy Kimmel is
the host.
the host.
Yes, and Matt Damon was with Ken Jennings.
They have scenes where where Matt Damon is presented as if he lives on the set because he's being told that any day he's going to be the guest.
Yes.
And he's been waiting like for years to be called to be a guest on the show.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was funny, the whole bit was good. But this was a charity thing. This is not for the people, for the celebrities.
I was just going to ask that. What are they
Yes.
doing
Was
winning
it
$1
for
million?
water?
Yes.
Oh, because Matt Damon's water. I know that's his.
Yes, it was for water.org.
Ah, yeah. Well, we need water.
Yep. We need clean water
Yep.
for people to be able to drink in places that aren't like we have water we can drink. Just go to the sink. There are places you can't do that.
Okay. Do you remember, did we read all of 35? We were talking about the city of refuge and the various elements that
Definitely got up to 29. I think we stopped at 20. Lois, I think we stopped at 29. Oh, you don't have a book.
all
I
right,
have a
let's do from 29 through 34. Yeah, to the end.
Okay, I'll put that.
All right.
These shall be for you
Loud.
a decree of justice for your generations in all your dwelling places. Whoever smites a person according to the testimony of witnesses shall one kill the killer, but a single witness shall not testify against a person regarding death. You shall not accept ransom for the life of a killer who is worthy of death, for he shall surely be put to death. You shall not accept ransom for one who fled to his city of refuge to return to dwell in the land before the death of the Kohen. You shall not bring guilt upon the land in which you are, for the blood will bring guilt upon the land. The land will not have atonement for the blood that was spilled in it, except through the blood of the one who spilled it. You shall not contaminate the land in which you dwell, in whose midst I rest, for I am Hashem, who rests among the children of Israel. It's hard to read with all those kids out there.
I know, but it's alive.
It's alive.
Okay, so this is the summation of the previous laws. And it says, this is for all generations, wherever you shall live. And then it emphasizes the importance of witnesses, that based on the testimony of the witnesses, he will be killed. You need to have two, not one. You can't take ransom. In other words, person can't pay to get out of this, either for the death sentence or to be to have to live in a city of refuge. And then from verses 33 and 34, which are both long verses, there's a connection made between the blood of the victim and the earth. In other words, there's something about earth and blood and atoning. So that there's this line in 33, and the land will not atone for the blood that is spilled on it. Right. So somehow, unless the punishment is carried out, the land will not atone. What does this mean? The land will not atone. It also speaks about the land becoming tameh. There's a possibility that the land will become tameh, and then it talks about the land which you will be dwelling in, which I dwell in its midst, because, and then he finishes, I Hashem dwell amongst the people of Israel. So you've got like a lot of pieces here, like dwelling amongst Israel. You have land that God dwells in. You've got making land impure. You've got land atoning. So, and somehow the land is lo tachnifu. It's like, how did you translate it? Make it guilty? Make it wicked? Make it guilty?
Will not atone for the blood?
No, higher than that. At the beginning of
Oh.
33, the first words of 33.
You shall not bring guilt upon the land in which you are, for the
Right.
blood.
So what does that mean? Guilt on the land. Somehow that blood brings guilt on the land, and the only way it can be atoned for is if the blood of the person who spilled it is spilled. And then there's impurity of the land. There's God living in the land, dwelling in the land. There's God dwelling amongst the people of Israel. You had it begin by saying this applies in all generations, wherever you shall live. Usually wherever you shall live makes it sound like both in Israel and outside of Israel. That's what it seems to mean here. But then towards the end in verse 34, it makes it sound like we're talking about Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah.
Because haaretz, you shall not make haaretz, you shall not make it impure, the land which you live in, which I dwell in it. It sounds like there you're talking about Eretz Yisrael.
In one of the explanations, it says, shall not bring guilt. The sin of murder and of condoning it is much worse in Eretz Yisrael.
It's worse than Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
Right. So they agree that that's talking about Eretz Yisrael. So there's some kind of switch that happened there, or whatever, like shift a little bit. So there's like a lot of pieces here that need to be worked out. So if we go back to the very beginning. So in the story of Cain and Abel, so this would be in chapter 4. So this is verse 10. Well, might as well start with 9. And God said to Cain, where is Hevel your brother? And he said, I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper? And he said, Ma asita, what have you done? Kol dmei achicha, the voice of the blood of your brother. So akim elai min ha'adama. Cry out to me from the adama, from the earth. And then it goes on to say, Va'ata arur ata, and you will be cursed min ha'adama, from the earth. Acher patasa espiha lakachas estme achicha miadecha, which opened up its mouth to take the blood of your brother from your hand. Ki ta'avodet ha'adama lo tosif tet kocha lach. When you work the land, it will not continue to give its strength to you. You will be a wanderer on the Aretz. It's interesting. When they say nav and nad, you'll be a wanderer. There, the word they use is Aretz, like earth. When they use, but for the rest of the time, they keep on using the word Adama. The voice of your brother, of the blood of your brother, cry out to me from the Adama. That's verse 10. And then in verse 11, you are cursed from the Adama. Again, it uses it. And then it's 12, when you work the Adama. So the word for land is Adama. And then suddenly at the end of that verse, you will be wandering Ba'aretz, on the Aretz. It's a synonym, but it's not the same word. Aretz, it means earth. Adama means land, but they seem to mean the same thing.
Well, maybe the land refers to the land that they're going to be in, whereas the earth refers to all the land.
So Adama is more specific,
Yeah.
local. It's local. Okay.
Not
What to
only
say in
local,
Genesis.
but also it's where man came. Adamah is what Adam came from. In
Right.
other words, there's a more relationship between Adamah and man than the earth itself, Eretz.
But are you, but why does it need to switch? Oh, so why, let's say at the end of 12, when it talks about wandering, does it move to Aretz? So you're saying that when it's talking about the intimate relationship between Adam and the land, it uses Adamah. When it's talking about a kind of indifferent relationship, it uses the word Aretz. Is that what you're saying?
I think I am. I think
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
you're just talking about the world in general. You're not talking
Okay.
about the ground you came from and the ground you work. You're going to be working with that ground yourself.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I have it as translated as the wanderer on earth.
Earth. Yeah. Nice. Because Eretz, it's probably derived, Earth is probably derived from that word Aretz. They sound very similar. Okay. Now, also, when Noah is born, what word does it use? Methuselah. We have Lamech, who had a son. And in verse 29, Lamech names his son Noach. So it says, Vayikra Shmo Noach, he called his name Noach, Lemor, saying, Ze yinachamenu mima'asenu umitzavon yadenu min ha'adama asher erara Hashem. So this one will bring us comfort from our actions and the suffering of our hands from the Adamah, which God had cursed. So here it uses the word Adamah again appropriately. In other words, consistent to what you were saying. And then in verse 7, it says, and God said, I will wipe out Adam, which I have created from the face of Adamah, from Adam until animal, until the things that creep. So again, it uses Adamah. It doesn't use earth. It uses Adamah here in the Noah story. And, but in verse 12, in verse 11, at the end of verse 11, it says, and the Aretz was filled with Hamas, which means violence or theft or Hamas. Yeah. And then in verse 12, it uses Aretz twice. God saw the Aretz, the earth, and it was corrupt. All flesh corrupted its way on the Aretz. And then in verse 13, so Aretz is becoming the dominant way of referring to the land. Kimala haaretz, the earth came full of Hamas, and I will destroy the Aretz. So it's Aretz, 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 Aretz. Then on 17, I'm going to bring a mabul on the Aretz. And then in verse 4 of chapter 7, it switched back to Adamah again. I'm bringing rain, and I am going to destroy everything, wipe out everything which grows. Me'al pnei Adamah uses the word Adamah again. And then it goes back to Aretz in verse 6. And then it's in verse 8, Adamah, by things that the creep on the earth, or swarm on the earth, or creep on the earth. And Aretz in verse 10. Aretz in verse 12. Aretz in verse 14. Aretz in verse 17. Aretz in verse 18. Aretz in verse 19. Aretz in verse 12. So the dominant term is Aretz during this flood. There are a couple times when the word Adamah is used, but the dominant word is Aretz. And I would say the dominant word for the land in the Cain story is Adamah. The dominant word there is Adamah. The word Aretz does come up, but the most common word being used is Adamah. So yeah, so if somebody if you stick with your intimate and indifferent connection thing, so you'd go through each one of those and try to see if it's consistent. If it's perfectly consistent, I would be suspicious because nothing is perfectly consistent. And those kind of rules are never perfectly consistent. So the fact that it doesn't work out in some cases, yeah, that's what you expect. Get nervous if it works out too well. Okay, so that's that. Also, by the way, the word Adamah, which you connected to the word Adam, both of them are connected to the word Dam. Dam is blood. Dam
Blood.
is calling out from the Adamah. So that's almost like a pun. I have not read her stuff on this, but there's a woman named Judy Klitzner who wrote a great book. This book I did read, a great book where she showed how the relationship between stories throughout Tanakh, like Rabbi Foreman does. Yeah. But in her case, she suggests that sometimes what you're being shown is an alternate option for an earlier story. So, for instance, there's lots of textual connections between Jonah and Noah. Lots of textual interconnection. So she suggested, what would have happened if Noah didn't go along with it? God said, I'm going to destroy the earth and I'm saving you. What would have happened if Noah said, no, I don't want to be a part of it? So you get an option to see that kind of version. It's not exactly it, but something similar in Yonah. And she does this with many stories throughout Tanakh. She shows first the intertextual connections, and then how some of these stories are, I think she calls them subversive sequels. Subversive sequels in Tanakh. Anyways, Aviva Zornberg is close to her. I don't know if she knows me, but I know her because she's married to a guy from Milwaukee who at one point was my babysitter, Steve Klitzner. Anyway, so Aviva Zornberg is close to her, and Aviva Zornberg has told me she identifies many puns in the Torah. She feels like the Torah leans into puns as a way of connecting notions, but also establishing stories. So here you have one. You have the Dam is calling out from the Adamah. Again, even the Adamah, the right. So there's a guy who is the head or one of the main rabbis at the Temple Institute, who is an expert in red heifers. So he told friends of mine that when it's called red, it really means clay. It means clay color. So when you see a potential red heifer, they're often not bright red. They're often more like rust colored, more like clay
That's
colored.
my picture.
Right, more like clay colored. In fact, an Angus, like a brown, I forgot if it's not called a brown Angus. It's some kind of a.
Like,
But anyways, they're sometimes called brown, but they are this clay color and they qualify as paraduma. So it could be that's a connection, which is the reddish color because blood is red. The word for red is Edom, Edom, which has dam in it. Edom, which has dam in it, is related to red and Adama. So it could be that it's the that these all get the that Adama is the first word, and Dam and Adam, they all get their names because of Adama. Or it could be that Adama is getting its name because it's reddish. So I don't know if red came first or Adama came first. Like which came first, the color orange or the orange? So
well, figure the earth was there first.
right. So if you figure the earth is there first, then you would assume that the earth is giving the name to the color. And it's also giving the name to the human because the human
Came from the earth.
comes from the earth, but the human also relies on Dam.
Right.
And so and Dam gets its name from perhaps from the color. Again,
Right,
Edom.
they're all mixed up.
Right.
Can I
Yeah.
make a suggestion? I'm gonna have to leave. Can I make a suggestion about our verse back to you know,
Yes.
30?
Yeah.
Just a suggestion that we were trying to say whether it's for all the places you live or for only in, in Haaretz.
Yeah.
Maybe it's where you live. When he at the end he says, I am Hashem who rests among the children of Israel. So wherever Jews are living, this applies.
It could be that, and I'm not against that, but the reason I feel like it leans in is because where is this place that God dwells amongst the people? Typically, we say that's the Mishkan. Suli mikdash v'shachanti bitocham. Make for me a sanctuary, and I will dwell amongst them. Now, he doesn't have to be in Israel, but when he identifies that he dwells amongst us, and and that and that we live on the land, and he's connected to the land. Yeah, so it could be. It could be. There was just something about it
Maybe
that
I have
was
enough
interesting.
Hasidus that the dwelling is within each Jew. I mean,
It says each Jew, but it also
each
says make.
Jew.
I know, but it says makes for me a sanctuary. Where is the
You're the
sanctuary?
sanctuary. We are
No,
the sanctuary.
that's not what it. That's not in the context over there. Fine. I mean, you could say that in a very, but typically, but
In
where,
all your dwelling places. This shall
but
be a
it,
decree of justice in all your generations and dwelling places.
you can do that kind of thing as long as you remember what the source was. The source of this idea is in Truma when they're building the Mishkan, and it says, and there is where he said, "Make me a sanctuary so I can dwell amongst them." Again,
Yes,
I'm
I
not
know.
saying it doesn't.
I know.
It's you could say what you're saying. You could say what you're saying, but there's a part that you sort of
I
it
know.
just
It's a
seems like it's
stretch.
focusing there. But I'm okay with stretches. Just as long as we recognize that it is in fact a stretch, we can stretch.
Okay.
All right.
I'm not totally
Yeah.
gone, but I'm going to be on mute
Okay.
for
All right. Fine. Okay.
So you're listening and not talking.
Right. So, okay. So now going back to the connection between the blood and the earth. So now if we're saying that the earth is connected to the person because the person comes of the earth and the person is reliant on blood as its life energy, like it says, ki adam hu hanefesh, blood is the soul, so to speak, the life force. So the life force of the human is represented in the blood. So you have this blood. I'm gonna if I was drawing this as a diagram, it would be blood to person to earth, earth to person to blood. So they're all connected. And also we say that when a person dies, they they return to the afar. Now there is another synonym. It doesn't say Adamah, it doesn't say Aretz, it says afar. You came from afar, you came from the dirt, and you will return to the dirt. But let's say for our purposes right now that in other words, that connection that we have with the earth is not simply because of an origin story that we originated from the earth, but we are we are reconnected to the earth. First of all, we're connected to the earth as for our livelihood, but we're also connected to the earth because that's where out of which we came, and it's where we're going to go. Each one of us goes into the earth. So, and especially at the end, we go into the earth. So let's say the person dies, and it's characterized here as here it says, this is in the curse of man. It's in chapter 3. In verse 19. By the sweat of your brow you will eat bread. Finally, you will return to the ground, for it was from the ground that you were taken. You are dust, and to dust you shall return. You are dirt, I would say, and to dirt you shall return. But the word is Adamah. Until you return to the Adamah. That's the word used here. You were taken from it because you are afar, and to afar you will return. So for right now, I'm gonna suggest something which is connected to ideas I've had before. This is, I admit, not the best scenario if every time you think of a question, you answer it based on something you already know, but I'm doing it anyways. And so the and that is this, that we are never fully disconnected from Adamah. We 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 as it says here, we are afar. It doesn't just say you were taken from afar. In this one, I leave that. It says ki afar ata, you are afar, you are dirt. Vel afar tashuv, and you return to dirt. So, in other words, we we are the earth. We never stop being the earth. It's not just like we're made from elements of the earth, but now we're completely disconnected. No, that's not true, and it's not certainly not the way it was supposed to be. Rather, we are an expression of the earth. We have at least part of us is an expression of the earth. There may be another aspect of our being that's an expression of the heavens, which is our being as represented by our soul. But so we always are earth, and we return to just being earth at some point. And that's why the blood is in the Adamah, because there's something that is unresolved, as we return to the earth, there's apparently some kind of a holdup because this person was murdered. There's something unfinished that needs to be finished. And that's what it means when it says the blood cries out to me from the ground, because as we're reconnecting to the earth, this holds up something that's supposed to happen. And the only way that can be fixed is if the person who caused this is all their blood is also spilled. In other words, that they are also killed.
Murderer shall be murdered.
Right.
Or
Killer shall be killed. Right. And somehow that fixes it. And now everything's back to the way it works. So why would that be? Why would that be? Why does that leave it unresolved? Why is that unresolved? Why is this such a big deal? Why is murder such a big deal? Well, there's some kind of justice. Now, that guy who killed the first person is also of the Adamah, right? He's also of the Adamah. So the Adamah has one part of it that's a killer, and the other part of it is killed. And this is how it's characterized. It is characterized that the Adamah, what is that word, kaf pei resh, that atonement word, it also comes up in our thing as to mean a what do you call that if somebody pays an indulgence? They called it indulgences, I think, in the Catholic Church. If you paid a certain amount of money, you are forgiven for a certain amount of sins. So this was there was a period of time in the Catholic Church where that was done. Yeah,
Into the coffers a coin rings, and out of purgatory a soul springs.
There you go. Nice. That's Lois's Jesuit background.
Yep. How do you remember these?
So in Catholicism, an indulgence is a remission of the temporal punishment due to sins that have already been forgiven. It's a way for the faithful to reduce or eliminate the time they might spend in purgatory after death due to the consequences of sins not fully atoned for in life. Indulgences are not a pardon for sin itself, nor do they allow one to commit future sins without consequences. Catholic theology distinguishes between the guilt of a sin and the punishment due to sin. Forgiveness of sins through sacraments like penance removes the eternal consequences. However, there still can be temporal punishment or consequences that need to be addressed, potentially through suffering in purgatory. Indulgences are a way to address this temporal punishment. The Church, acting as a dispenser of God's grace, offers indulgences through the application of the merits, etc. All right. Indulgences. While the practice of selling indulgences is no longer part of the church's teachings, the concept of indulgences as a remission of temporal punishment remains within Catholic doctrine. So, anyways, I don't know. I think this was in medieval times, right? When they were by the
Well,
late
it was
Middle
one of the
Ages.
reasons that Luther was against the church. He
Right.
talked about indulgences being horrible all the time.
Right.
So that's right.
That's
So that's early modern Europe.
so they
Right.
called it
So,
late Middle Ages. Indulgences were used to support charities for the public good, including hospitals. However, the abuse of indulgences for almsgiving so that they became a method of money raising or ignored the requirements for contrition or charity had become a serious problem. Abuses in the practice and teaching on indulgences were, from the beginning of the Protestant Reformation, a target by attacks of Martin Luther. Okay, so that's what is being warned against. I think it's not exactly this, but is very close to this. What a kofar was when they say a kofar shall not be paid for a death penalty or for to get out of having to go to a city of refuge, that is like this. In other words, you're going to pay money, and somehow that is going to remove the punishment, right? And the Torah is saying you can't do that for murder and you can't do it for murder and you can't do it for negligent homicide or whatever. Does that imply that you can do it for other things? Would you say that implies that you can do it for other things?
Minor things, maybe, yeah.
Right? We do say that prayer, repentance, and tzedakah can overcome a negative decree. So tzedakah is often understood to mean actual charity, money given to the poor. So I guess that theology suggests that something like the indulgence that they're talking about. Again, I'm not trying to, it's dangerous to do it. I'm just bringing it up because it's so well known that that thing of indulgences in the church. That's the only reason I brought it up as an example, because I'm not saying it's the same thing, but it would be interesting to study this. I have a study partner who his area of specialty is responding to Christian challenges to Jewish theology. I have to ask him about that thing. Anyways, okay, so there, the word kaf pei resh means some money that you're going to give in order to, in exchange for freedom or in exchange for not being punished. Money that you're giving. Here, it's the earth will not grant kapara. The earth will not. Why is it the earth's to do? The earth will not grant it. It will, right? It's also for Yom Kippur. This is the word we often use for atonement. So here they would say the earth will not atone, but what specifically what this word means is something is being done in order to remove punishment. So what's being done here to remove punishment? Killing that other person. Killing that other person is what is like the equivalent of the money being paid. So the money being paid would reduce punishment. So, right. It doesn't say that here, though. It doesn't say a life for a life. It focuses on the earth. Focuses on the earth. And there's one more place I'd like to go, or at least for right now. That is.
so when we don't interpret nefesh, tachas, nefesh, but maybe we should. I mean,
Right. I mean, what is that, by the way? Is that a kofar?
Right. I
Right,
mean,
yeah, well, let's say the eye for an eye part. The eye for an eye part, that would be an indulgence, lahavdil.
right.
It's
Payment.
money
Yeah.
being paid in order to resolve guilt, right? But we do a soul for a soul, typically. In other words, that seems to be what is being described here. Sounds like we do a soul for a soul. Also, I just wanted to bring up this language on the Torah portion of Achremot. So this is in chapter 18 of Vayikra, of Leviticus. And so it says in verse, let's say, 24, do not let yourselves be defiled by any of these acts. These are sexual crimes. It was as a result of them that the nations that I am driving away before you became defiled. The land became defiled. Now it uses that word titma, like tameh, tameh. The land became tameh. That's our words, tameh. The land became tameh. The land became tameh. And when I directed my providence at the sin committed there, the land vomited out its inhabitants. Now,
What's that with disgorged?
right, so the land kicked out its inhabitants because it became tameh. And then it says it again in verse 27. The people who lived in the land before you did all these disgusting perversions and defiled the land. Once again, tameh. Now here, the word that is being used is aretz. It's using aretz a lot over here. Okay, so let's just review. We were in the portion of Maseh, and we're at the part where is just reviewing what we had said. And in that language, it says, you shall not take kofar. So that's that kaf pei resh word, which is going to go back and be related into the Cain episode as the earth will not atone. So you shall not take a kofar on behalf of the soul of the one murdered. I'm sorry, on behalf of the murderer. He has to die. You can't take kofar from the one who's supposed to go to the city of refuge. And then it calls, first it says you're gonna tachnif. That word chanifa here is being translated as make wicked, make guilty the land. The land will not be mechaper, will not atone for the blood that's spilled in it. And then it says in verse 34, do not defile the land. So these key words are all here in this section, and they're in this section in Achremot, where it's talking about the sexual perversions. So it says, again, Titma haaretz. It doesn't say kaf pei resh though, does it? It doesn't have all the words. It just has the tameh word. It has the tameh word. But what you see from here is that when the land is tameh, it will spit you out. If you make the land tameh, it will spit you out. That's one thing here. So if you don't want to get spit out, you need to atone, and that's by killing the killer. That's what we learn from. So the additional information we get from Achremot is the end of Achremot is that when a land is tameh, it spits you out like it did the other nations. And then back to the Cain and Abel story. It has Adamah. It has that the land will be you are cursed from the Adamah. So what do you see here? He has to wander. So that might be an expression, the same expression of being spit out. Of being spit out. The wandering. But then what is the response in Noah? In Noah, it's not that. The people are not, they don't all go into exile. In Noah, the land has to be like sort of renewed or, sort of start over. There has to be like a do-over with the land. So that's also an option, I guess. That would have been an option. Okay, so that's our journey for today. We went from the end of Maseh back to Cain and Abel, from Cain and Abel to Noah and the flood, from Noah, and then to Achremos, where we're discussing the other nations being spit out, which it mentions in a few other places, but that's one of them. Alrighty. I am grateful
Okay,
that
thank
we
you.
had a
Thank you,
chance to
Rabbi.
do this.
We
Thank
should
you.
All
say
right, be
goodbye
well,
to
guys.
July.
Shabbat shalom,
July.
everybody.
Goodbye, July.
Goodbye,
And
July.
next time we meet, it will be after Tisha B'Av. It's still a
Yes.
chance for Tisha B'Av to be a holiday. There's still a couple days. It could happen.
We're
All right.
Okay.
All right. Be well. All right. Bye-bye.
Grandma.